It's great to be here with all of you. So this afternoon we're going to be talking a bit about competing with Silicon Valley. I'm going to start off though with just a brief introduction with everybody. So we'll start off with William. If you could tell us just a little bit about your company and how you started up.
Sure. The company is called Deliveroo. We work with your local restaurants, your high-quality local restaurants, and we deliver their restaurant meals to your home and office in about 30 minutes. Started the company really out of personal dissatisfaction with pure online food delivery marketplaces, and so wanted to get really high-quality food delivered to my house. That wasn't really an option, so we started Deliveroo to accommodate that.
And your headquarters are in London, but Andra, you're based in Silicon Valley.
Yes, I am. I feel like I'm here being the Goliath, and these guys are going to get out the slings. But I have the advantage of having an Australian perspective on Silicon Valley, so I do get to compare the advantages and disadvantages. And what I do is I run the industry cluster for robotics there. Robotics is a really interesting emerging area. It's still quite young in terms of development, but it's a lot of activity happening there, and I do a lot of work with startups.
And Chris, yourself, you're also based in the States, but not with Silicon Valley.
Yes, so I founded a company called Canary, and we're based in New York City. And we have a consumer security product. It's about the size of this bottle of water, and we've packed it full of sensors that you'd have in a home security system: camera, microphone, temperature, humidity, air quality, and it connects to your broadband connection at home. And then we have a smartphone app that keeps you in touch with your home from wherever you are in the world. And I founded the company with two other co-founders around the premise that it should be simple and easy to connect to the physical places you care about. And so we started that journey about 3.5 years ago, and we just recently launched this past year.
Great. Well, I'm going to go back to you for a minute. Now, you started Deliveroo in London. Can you talk us through a bit about how you actually started up, and in terms of attracting capital, what you went through and how the culture is in the UK?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
okay.
I can.
Yeah, so started the company, with a co-founder who was technical. I'm not. We bootstrapped the operation, and eventually some investors started using the product, and a few people reached out to us. Also, I used to work in finance, so I knew a lot of people in not so much the VC industry, but just people in fund management. So I was introduced to a number of funds that way. And that's how we raised our Series A.
So you had a bit of a support structure anyway, and that helped you in terms of growing the company?
In terms of growing the company, it was just myself and my co-founder for the first, I would say, for about the first 12, 14 months actually. So yes, I guess we had each other, but it wasn't a massive support structure.
And what were the biggest challenges that you faced at that moment?
What, early on?
Yeah.
I mean, everything. I don't think there's really there's not really a list of things. I mean, it's, I was doing all the deliveries, myself. My co-founder was building all the technology. During the day, I was trying to sign up restaurants to the marketplace. At night, like I said, delivering food, answering customer service calls. So yeah, I mean, just everything.
Chris, based in New York, what process did you guys go through to attract capital, to get investors? You do have some Silicon Valley investors as well.
So early on, we have a hardware product, and traditional investors have an apprehension to hardware, let's just say. And so early on, we focused mostly on angels, and so we found angels in the Valley, San Francisco, and in New York, that believed in our vision of building this truly consumer security product. And it wasn't until our successful Indiegogo campaign did traditional investors really, come talking to us. So that really validated us. So about 2.5 years ago, we went on Indiegogo, and we were the most successful product on their platform at the time. We sold about 10,000 products in a month, and that was about $2 million. And that really helped us with tooling and manufacturing, which was needed to kind of get us off the ground.
That campaign, in fact, was huge, and at its time, it was one of the biggest. What kind of thought process did you go through to decide to actually go out there and go go for crowdsourced funding rather than going to other investors?
So one of the things that we were kind of up against in the investment community was a lot of, I guess, failed hardware companies. And so when we spoke to traditional investors, they said, you have a hardware problem, you have a software problem, and you have a brand problem. Remove one of those problems and we'll invest. And I think that's really good advice for most companies that don't and should not build hardware. But for us, it was part of our vision. And so we stuck to that and we said, no, we can't remove that. And then there were some investors, some angels that agreed with that vision. And so we were able to get some capital before our Indiegogo. But then, when we went on Indiegogo, that really validated that what we were building was something that people wanted. And then we were able to raise capital after that. So Coastal Ventures led our A round, and then we raised a B round earlier this year from Walden Riverwood.
Now, Andra, one of the things with Silicon Valley is the fact that there's this ecosystem that's really, built, and people go to Silicon Valley because they have that support structure. Can you tell us a bit about that and how that would be different to other places for people sort of seeking to start up companies elsewhere? And what is the value of having that ecosystem and not?
I have an interesting perspective on it because that ecosystem didn't exist for robotics when I started Silicon Valley Robotics 5 years ago, and it largely didn't exist for hardware startups at all. Investors weren't interested in investing in hardware. There were very few meetups, very few groups, and I felt that there was an ecosystem, and we would be able to solve a lot of our problems by connecting into the existing ecosystem, but we had to grow the hardware ecosystem, and I was not the only person thinking along those lines. This is around the time that Lemnos Labs started and the Highway 1 Accelerator started, the hardware startup meetup started, and we've just seen this continue to grow as more and more people realize that they can provide whatever's missing in that ecosystem. They can make a connection or create that missing part themselves. And now we have a very good startup ecosystem, and we're actually maturing the problems that we're solving. So much of the last 5 years has really been seed stage problems, and now we're dealing with Series A stage problems, and it's a lot more about growth. How do you manage your teams? How do you grow your teams? How do you recruit? And, I didn't think I would be finding those problems in robotics for quite some time.
Well, I wanted to touch on that with you a bit. In fact, in terms of people and growing teams and companies, generally people tend to sort of see Silicon Valley as the place to go to, the place to be. You're far from there. How do you attract the talent that you want for your company?
Yeah, I think that there's been, I guess to answer the question a bit more fully, we've been lucky in the sense that we've been able to hire people with Silicon Valley experience, mostly Europeans and Brits that want to actually go home. And so that's been a really fertile recruiting ground. In addition, we've been lucky to hire people from other startups over time as well. But if you look at the senior management today, a number of them do actually have Silicon Valley experience. And I think that's honestly a good place to look. Because in Europe, you just haven't had as many people scale, very large teams, very large companies. It's getting there, but it hasn't really been done. And so, going to California and looking there is fairly logical.
So how do you see it going forward in terms of Europe and the atmosphere and the environment there? Where do you think Europe is going to head in terms of competing with Silicon Valley?
I mean, you're seeing much larger companies being built today versus, say, 5 years ago. So it'll definitely change, but there's still a way to go before it catches up.
Have you had similar experiences as well, Chris, with attracting your talent?
Yeah, we have a number of our senior management from the Valley, and they've been hugely impactful on our business because in New York we have had some high-scale companies and some really great exits, and that helps from running a business from going from the scale stage to really the growth stage. So yeah, I mean, we've a number of folks from the Valley, and they are coming to New York. And I think that being in New York, and especially what we do in New York, is rather unique in the hardware space. So from attracting talent, whether it's an independent contributor on the engineering team or someone on the marketing team, what we're doing is unique, and the problem we're solving is really a problem that everyone shares. It's I want to be comfortable leaving my home, and our product helps you do that. And so we're able to attract people from all over to kind of help us build the company.
We've only got a few minutes left, so I actually want to open up to the floor in case anybody else has any questions. So we can start with that. Are there any questions out there? Anyone? Yeah.
Hey guys, how do I get, or Andra, sorry, how do I get a job in Silicon Valley?
Go stalk the company that you want to work for. Because if you know enough about a company to know that you want to work for them, then you're going to break down some of those initial barriers. And every company I know is hiring, and they have trouble kind of sorting out the signal from the noise. It really helps if you make the extra effort to say, I know what you're doing, I know how I would add value to your company.
Just go there and knock on their doors?
Exactly.
All right, thanks.
I would say, so I've had a number of people that we've ended up hiring, reaching out through channels that are unique. So, for domain names, there are email addresses that list for domain names. And I got an email from our canary.is email address, and it was a story about how he was looking to how to get in touch with me personally, and wrote me a really compelling message that made me want to reach out and engage with him. So, I would find creative ways to talk to the founders or the hiring managers of those companies. And to your point, know the company maybe even better than the people who are at the company, because those are the types of people you want to, on the team, for whatever it is that you're doing.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My question is, you mentioned Silicon Valley talent, but what does it mean? Because I think there are brilliant people everywhere in the world. So what does it mean to have Silicon Valley talent?
Can you guys hear me?
No, try again.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, what it means is experience scaling a company in its growth stage. It has nothing to do with intelligence or anything like that. It's just, if you've taken, a company from $10 million in revenues to 500, that doesn't happen that often in other places. And so you have not a lot, but you have a number of people there that have done it and have scaled up an engineering organization or product team or a sales team, and those are, that's I think what we all mean by that.
I like to say that Silicon Valley has the highest innovation potential per square inch of anywhere. And it has a lot to do with bringing together all of that experience so that you're much more likely to connect to the answers to your problems when you have the need. And there's one other thing that you can grow anywhere, and it's developing the shared vocabulary so that when we talk about growing to scale, we already know what sort of problems you're talking about, what sort of skills and what sort of solutions. There is a lot about creating that kind of communication vocabulary wherever you are that can help speed things up.
Yeah, and we've hired, a lot of people that certainly aren't even that experienced and have done, an amazing job at the company. I just think, but particularly when it comes to scaling, though, that's just a something that you have to go through. You have to have the experience to really know. And that's what we look for, in some senior management positions. Not all, for sure.
Sorry.
I can add. Taking a company from an idea to maybe shipping to your first customer is a set of skills that all of you and everyone is capable of doing. But taking a business from say 50 individuals to 150 or to 1,000 people it's an art. There's no right way to do it. And so when you look to scale a business from, we're approaching 100 people, we're making mistakes every day in how we're running the business or how we're going into a particular market. And when you bring on an experienced individual, they've got the battle scars of what they've done in their business, and they can apply those learnings, that experience, that wisdom to what you're doing. And so that's when you look at what you're doing in a competitive market, and the time you have to be successful is limited. So when you want to maximize for success, having experienced people, doesn't always equal a great outcome, but you have a better chance of being successful when you have that wisdom on the team or having great advisors.
I think though you also need to be aware of the culture, of the environment that you're working in. So while you have the Silicon Valley environment, you don't necessarily have that sort of same environment that would work elsewhere, whether you're in Europe or you're going into different markets. So again, you would probably need some experience from people that have that experience of those markets and not just...
You need experience with your region, and you need those connections as well if you're going to be a useful part of a business. And you also need experience with the domain or vertical that you go into. So we certainly see this with robotics. It's a technology that it could potentially be applied to anything, but it rarely is a successful business without having people who deeply understand a particular problem space.
Yeah. We have time for one really quick question.
Maybe for Chris.
Sorry, just
No?
speak closer into it.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you hear me now? Okay, fine. Maybe for Chris, just around crowdfunding, just some advice on, how why do you think it works so well for you? How did you prepare for that? Did you expect it? Just advice generally.
Sure. So crowdfunding for us was a necessity just based on the capital you need to build a hardware company. And we spent about 2 months preparing for that. So don't think on Friday you're going to launch a campaign on Monday because you're not going to be successful. We brought in a lot of experts around communication. How do you tell the average person what your product does in a meaningful way? And so for us, we remove technology from the conversation. It's what will the product do for you and how will it enrich your life? And if you focus on that story and telling the story of how the product will make that person's life better in some way, they can relate to that product and then hopefully then back your product. Happy to talk to anyone about crowdfunding.
Okay. I'm afraid we have to leave it there, but thank you so much, and thank you to our panel as well. Really appreciate it.